From 12 News, this is Newsmakers.
The start of a new year means the start of a new session for Rhode Island's 113 state lawmakers. The General Assembly is facing familiar challenges in 2025, including the biggest budget deficit in years as federal relief money dries up. They'll also consider whether to ban so-called assault weapons, ways to speed up housing construction, and how to attract more primary care physicians. We'll discuss it all with our guests. This week on Newsmakers, Rhode Island House Speaker Joe Shekarchi and House Majority Leader Chris Blazejewski. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside 12 News Politics editor Ted Nesi, and we welcome House Speaker Joe Shekarchi and House Majority Leader Chris Blazejewski. Good to have you both back on the program. Welcome.
It's always great to come on your show, both of you.
So, Speaker, I want to start with the budget. Like last year, you have again started warning everyone that things will be tight in the budget, and there's a projected deficit of anywhere between, depending on who you talk to, $250 and $330 million. But to be clear, you and other lawmakers played a big role in creating that deficit, speeding up Medicaid reimbursements, rejecting changes to the education funding formula, boosting...
Excuse me, you said rejecting?
Rejecting changes to the funding formula.
Remember the governor wanted to scale back?
To scale back.
Okay,
yeah, so
I didn't know what you meant. Yes, okay.
Increased spending, boosting pension benefits, tax cuts to Citizens Bank. Those may all be laudable in your view individually, but that is why you are hand-wringing about a potential shortfall, correct?
That's part of the reason. Yes, we also don't control caseloads, and also the executive branch did give out
caseloads, meaning with Medicaid,
and in the prisons and a lot of places that we don't control how many people get sick. We don't control how many people go in the from a legislative point of view are in prison and generates more overtime at the prison. Those are factors, but also the executive branch gave out substantial raises. I'm not saying they were justified or not justified this year, and that was after the budget as well, and that contributes to that as well. And then some of our revenue is down because of the economy where we are. So all of those things, and yes, we had the money, and when we passed the budget, it was balanced, and there were needs. I mean, I can't think of anything more important than educating children, and every city and town wanted more money. All 39 cities and towns wanted more education funding. We had the money. It made sense to do it. We had committed to do 3 years of rate adjustment in that behavior health. There was a lot of need in that area. We fulfilled that in 1 year instead of 3. We accelerated it, but we were going to be on the hook for that, whether it's this year or next year. So we accelerated a little bit. That's a fair point of view. I don't dispute it.
Flip side of the coin, though, this time last year you were on the show, and again, the sky is falling, right? And everybody pumped the brakes, and then it turned out to be not such a bad year money-wise. So how much of that is you just sort of posturing before the May revenue conference?
It's not necessarily posturing. It says, respectfully, you have no idea the pressure, not the pressure, but the request that we get, the leader and I, in the General Assembly, and I'm sure that they get it in the Senate too, but of the advocacy groups and every interested party you can imagine coming in for funding. And what I tell everybody is they need to go to see the governor first. They need to go and get in the budget first. And when they don't get in the budget, they then come to us, and they're asking for, and by the way, every single cause is a good cause. No one comes for a bad cause. No one comes and asks me to fund something that's really like...
somebody must come with a cause you think is not worthwhile.
Not necessarily. Everybody comes and they all make a very good case, a very compelling case. They have either very good advocates or very good lobbyists, or they have very good people who make good cases, but we can't make money that doesn't exist. So we have to learn to live within our means.
We have a bunch of questions on housing. It's been your top priority, both housing construction and the homelessness issue. I want to ask you first, Leader Blazejewski, because this is a Providence issue. You represent Providence. The pallet shelters. Yeah. We've talked about enough in the show. I think people even know it's taking a long time to actually get those open. It's winter. I guess when you zoom out, I just still find it perplexing that something it seems like all of state government has agreed should be done on a crisis that you have reps doing petitions about is just so slow. I mean, is there frustration in the legislature that this is, I don't know how many months, it's approaching a year, I think, since they were starting to get set up.
Ted, I can tell you the Speaker and I are extremely frustrated by this situation. We have made housing, when our first caucus, we met with our caucus, housing was a big issue. Speaker knows a lot about it, and we've prioritized in the House by providing resources to the administration to try to increase production, to lower the cost of housing, to lower the costs for Rhode Islanders across the state. And on this specific issue, we've provided funding. And we've had Housing Commission meetings over and over in the spring, in November, in December. We've asked questions about this. David Cicilline from the Rhode Island Foundation was on a commission asking questions about this. And here we are in January, and they're not open yet. So we're very frustrated. I know there's been calls for an emergency action. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. We got to get these things open. I mean, let's not forget the human element of this. These are people in the cold suffering. And no one would want to be in that cold for a few minutes, let alone an entire night. We have got to get government working to make sure that people that are that vulnerable have a safe, warm place to be. And so we're very frustrated with the situation.
You caught my ear there about opening the door a little to this state of emergency idea. And I want to ask you, Speaker, Representative Tanzi, I know, has been collecting signatures in the House. I saw even Leader Chippendale on the Republican side and Sherry Roberts, another Republican, were on that. What do you think? The legislature is always also careful about telling the governor to just waive everything with an executive order. What do you think at this point?
So I think whatever it takes, as the leader said, there is a human element here that we cannot forget. There are people outside, living outside right now. And if you've been outside for a few minutes, it is very cold out. Whatever it takes to get people inside, whether it's opening up City Hall, whether it's declaring an emergency, whatever it takes to help people, we need to do it. We need to do it now.
But have either of you signed Rep. Tanzi's call for declaring an emergency order by the governor?
No.
Or called the governor?
Yeah,
you're the Speaker.
I spoke to the governor about it last night.
What was the conversation like, or what came out of it?
I said to the governor, Governor, there's a petition going on. What are we doing? Where are we? And I said to the governor, if there are beds available, then we need, as a state or executive branch of the Department of Housing, which, by the way, that we set up, they need to be much better in the communication, what shelters are open, what beds are available, and when they're available, so that people who need it know that there's a place to go. So I have been told from the Department of Housing that we have capacity. And I'm like, well, where is it? How are you publicizing it? How are you getting it out? If you remember during COVID, we had a dashboard where we listed stuff, and we can do that again for housing. It's not difficult to do. Or even if it's a daily press release every day at 4 o'clock, send to our friends in the media at Channel 12. These shelters are open today.
So it's a communications problem to you.
That's part of the problem for sure, because I'm hearing from the Department of Housing that there is space available, and I'm hearing from advocates that there is not space available. And I'm like, well, where is the space and how much is available? And I don't know the answers to those questions.
Not just on homelessness. I'm curious. I feel like you've been frustrated with the Department of Housing. What letter grade would you give them overall?
Well, I don't like to grade, and this new director has been there like less than 30 days. I've met her once. I've had communications with her and talked to her.
A lot of turnover in that position.
A lot of turnover in that whole department. And I want the department to function and do well. And I want to support whoever is there, whether it's Josh Schuettel, whether it's Stephen Pryor, whether it's Senator Connors, or whether it's Deborah Goddard. It doesn't matter to me who the person is. It's about the job, getting the job done, and we need to get it done on a municipal level, on a state level. We need a Department of Housing function. Look, it's not just that job. We funded 38 positions, maybe 37, 38 positions in that department. They need to be full. They need to be working to help. This is a crisis situation. It's not unique to Rhode Island. It's not unique around the country. It's not a blue issue or a red issue. This is an issue that helps or hurts or affects human people, and we have to remember that, and we have to act accordingly.
I've just one more question. We're up at a break on this, but I've been struck, Speaker. I don't think any fair observer would argue that you haven't made this a top priority. You've pushed through bills, sometimes a lot of opposition and a lot of funding, and yet then when for example, the Zillow rent lists come out and they say Providence still has some of the highest rent increases in the country. How long is it going to take before we really see results? Because, I mean, it's hard to imagine someone in a job like yours doing much more than you've been doing.
About 1 minute.
I'm going to continue to do more. This issue doesn't go away, and my commitment doesn't go away. So you can expect more housing legislation from the General Assembly, from the House this year as well. But I will tell you that there are signs of higher production. The city of Warwick has over 1,000 building permits issued. Now, I realize a building permit isn't a house. City of Providence has building permits issued. Things we need to increase production. That's the answer to the solution. Unfortunately, it takes a long time to build a house. It takes a long time, and I'm getting, as you both know, a lot of municipal pushback. So we're going to continue to work with our partners and continue to make this. Just because it's hard doesn't mean we stop trying.
All right, we're going to take a break on Newsmakers. When we come back, the future of Hasbro and the Providence Public Schools. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside 12 News Politics editor Ted Nesi. Our guest this week, House Speaker Joe Shekarchi and House Majority Leader Chris Blazejewski. Briefly, Speaker Hasbro, can you give us an update on where things stand in trying to keep the iconic toy maker in Rhode Island?
It's still very much alive. I had breakfast with Chris Cox on last Sunday morning.
He's the CEO
He's the CEO of Hasbro, and I would think that Rhode Island is still in the game. I feel slightly better today than I felt a month ago as far as Rhode Island's chances. I think that Rhode Island still is in the game, and I think we're putting together a very good proposal and very good package for Hasbro, and we'll see if it's enough to keep them here. And we want them to stay very much in Rhode Island. They were born here. It's a 100-year-old company in Rhode Island. It's an iconic brand, an iconic name, and we'll do our very best. And I'm committed to do whatever we need from a General Assembly perspective, provided it's reasonable and affordable to make them stay in Rhode Island.
I don't want to spend too much time on the Washington Bridge, but I think it's literally your district, right, Rep. Blazejewski?
It's right there.
Yeah, right there. And so one thing that's I've been hearing more from people in recent weeks especially is that they see the Maryland Bridge, the one that the boat hit, and they feel like they see more activity happening faster there. And Rhode Island, we know there was no bids, and now we're not going to have a contractor till June. At the same time, I feel like I know when the legislature really wants to put the pressure on about something versus when you guys give the executive branch a lot of running room. I mean, what is the level of frustration around the bridge situation going into the new session now that we're, a year into that crisis?
Well, my constituents are certainly frustrated by the situation. I think people in the East Bay and the West Bay, it impacts Warwick, Cranston, East Greenwich, Providence, everywhere is impacted by the bridge. It is good that there's at least a timeline here to get a contract, but our questions, and I'm sure the speaker said this many times and he stayed here today, is that we want to know how much and when, and we need answers to those questions. Because we have to try to fund this new bridge. Now, fortunately, through the tremendous work of Senator Reid and Senator Whitehouse, we have gotten a lot of federal funds. But is that going to be enough? We don't know the answer to that sitting here today. Hopefully we'll know soon, but we're going to have to then respond in our state budget, which is already stressed from a variety of other places.
Just briefly, Speaker, I mean, you know the timing as well as I do. If they're going to have the contract in June, when usually you've finished the budget, right, at least in House Finance, yes, are you going to put a placeholder in?
Well, no, not in this budget. It's a very tight budget, but we have put money aside. Right. We have already put money aside, and as the leader said, to Jack Reed's credit, Sheldon Whitehouse's credit, our congressional, we have received some federal money. So we can certainly begin the process and not delay it, and then we can look at what the cost is going to be and what's available for us at that time. But I will tell you that Washington remains a very important funding part of the solution.
All right, Leader, Mayor Brett Smiley said this week that he's going to lobby for legislation to take back the state-controlled Providence public schools by July 1st. You are a Providence lawmaker. Are you going to support him in that effort?
So my kids go to Providence Public Schools. I walk my kids to school every morning. They go to Barton Gregorian. They love their school. We are in the House, and the Speaker and I have talked about this. We're going to focus on what's in the best interest of the children. There's, the state takeover. I don't think anyone can say with a straight face that it's met its promise. Years ago, it was that we're going to have significant change, and yes, we've seen improvements as to attendance, which is great, but it is not the significant change we've seen. On the other side of the coin, we in the state, in my time in legislature, we have doubled the amount that we provide Providence every year, from $100 million to $200 million. The city has only gone up by 10%. So where we are at 90%, 80% increase, they're at 10%. So when we're looking at this issue, we see adults fighting, and we want to focus on what's in the best interest of the children.
I get that, but if I'm the mayor watching this show, I'm going, wow, I don't have the support of Leader Blazejewski in this effort. Would that be a wrong assessment?
No. Well, so we need to take a look at the bill. We need to figure out what the benefits are to having the schools go back early, whether the benefits are to having them go back later. And at the end of the day, the decision is not going to be based on the adult. It's going to be what's in the best interest of the children.
So your mind is open either way?
Yeah.
Do you think that
yes.
carries through a lot of the Providence delegation? Because obviously you all will be listened to.
Yeah, so what we hear from our constituents who are worried about their kids in the school system, and that's what our focus is going to be.
All right, Speaker, truck tolls is back on the agenda after a few years off. Surprise. So the governor has said repeatedly, we asked him, are they going to be turned back on? He said, I got to talk to Speaker Shekarchi and Senate President about all that. As I understand it, the issue is you all want to turn them back on for the revenue, but the court said you can't do the Raimondo version of carving out, do a carve out to help the local truckers. And
you can't give the court decision was you could not give a preferential rate, i.e. a discount to local truckers.
Now I know you and your legal folks like to look creatively at those kind of things. Have you identified, or you think you can identify a way that the court will be okay with that still helps the local truckers?
So we're having, first of all, just logistically, we have the gantries that are up. We still have to put the scanning mechanisms up. We need to upgrade them, and we need to also upgrade the software. So there's a process that takes there. I believe we're still in the appeal period that has not expired yet. Beyond that, we're going to have discussions with all the stakeholders, and we'll decide what's in the best interest of the state. But it should be no surprise to anybody that we have a bridge problem, and it costs money, and we now have a mechanism to generate some revenue. So in all likelihood, the tolls will more than likely come back, and how or what and how much we don't know. But we're going to be very fair, we're going to be very open, we're going to be very transparent, and we're going to listen to everybody who's involved in that before we make a decision. So I don't expect anything to happen until toward the end of the session, maybe May, June, or July.
So tolls will be off at least through that time period, is what you're saying.
Logistically, they have to be. First of all, the appeal period has not been completed yet. They have an opportunity for an en banc hearing, which means the full circuit,
or to the Supreme Court,
or an appeal to the Supreme Court, which has no timetable. So those things could happen. We're waiting to see what's going to happen, and beyond that, just the logistics of it, just upgrading the gantries, upgrading new software, and reinstalling them is several months of a process.
All right, we're going to take a break on Newsmakers. When we come back, should pets be just property in the eyes of the law, or part of your family? Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. This is Ted Nesi. Our guest, House Speaker Joe Shekarchi, and House Majority Leader Chris Blazejewski. Speaker, this week, our colleague Kim Kalunian had a really sad story about a family that had to put their dog down after surgical scissors and gauze were left in its abdomen for almost 2 years. What I learned from the story is the law in Rhode Island views pets as property. So you can recover damages for the value of the dog, like a busted bike, right, but not for emotional distress. Should that change?
Yes, absolutely.
Will there be legislation to change it?
I hope so. If not, we'll look at doing that ourselves if no one from the body comes forward. But yes, we have proposed in the General Assembly for the last 4 or 5 years that I've been there a lot of legislation for animals, animal abuse, animal registries. We'll continue to do so. We're one of the strongest states in the country for animal abuse laws, and I'd like to see us be #1 in the state. I mean, personally, I'm a huge animal lover. I have a charity tournament every year. It goes to 3, 4 animal shelters. This year we went to wildlife shelters. Look, that law that you're talking about, or that current law, is something that existed 50, 100 years ago.
Right.
Today, and this is as much as my personal view as what I also believe objectively, that pets are not objects. They're part of people's families. A pet is part of someone's family, and they should be given the same protections, in my humble opinion. I know some people will disagree, and I respect that.
I'm sure vets will disagree, right?
I understand that, but there should be no difference.
You always like to roll your eyes at the political reporters when we ask about politics, but we ask anyway. You've said you could consider running for governor if Governor McKee doesn't run. Do you want Governor McKee to run again?
That's entirely up to him. I think Governor McKee's decision to be made will have irrelevant or whatever Joe Shekarchi wants or anybody else. The governor will make his decision, and his decision is his decision.
What do you think of Helena Foulkes?
I know Helena Foulkes. She's certainly, a credible candidate. She ran last time. She has statewide exposure.
Would she be tough to run against?
Depends on the race and who's involved, who's in the race, and what the issues are at that particular moment. But I think anybody who's run before would certainly be credible.
Leader Blazejewski, I was thinking about this. Obviously, part of why we bring you on is because you have said that you would like him to be Speaker when you're done being the Speaker.
There's no doubt in my mind he will be Speaker when I'm done.
All right. Well, then a question on that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think a woman has ever served as House Speaker, House Majority Leader, House Finance Chair, or House Judiciary Chair. Am I wrong about that?
Edie Agello was
Edie House Chair? Okay, take back Judiciary.
And I think also Nancy Benoit from Woonsocket many years ago was in a leadership position.
Was she? Okay,
Oh, yes.
so, but it's been relatively rare compared with the Senate, I guess I would say, in my years covering Rhode Island. Why do you think it's been more difficult for women to advance in the House versus the Senate, where we had a female Senate president and we have a female Majority Leader now?
Well, I actually disagree with that. Our leadership, we just elected our leadership team,
Yesterday.
our whip, Catherine Gazarian, our deputy whip, Mia Ackerman, our caucus chair, Grace Diaz. They were elected by acclamation in our chamber, the entire slate. So, we have focused on promoting women leaders in our chamber. We'll continue to do that. We do it with our chairs. We do it with our leadership team. And we just literally had an election yesterday.
But I'm talking
elected 3 women
about, you
to
know
our
what I'm
leadership
talking
team.
about. Speaker, Majority Leader, Finance Chair. Those are the core jobs. And it's been pretty rare that women have gotten those jobs. I mean, do you think more women will get into those jobs in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Speaker and I have certainly supported that over the years and will continue to support it into the future.
Speaker, Providence Mayor Brett Smiley said he's going to push for modifying the state's Rebuild RI tax credit so that it would allow a lot of things, but mainly the vacant Superman building to receive more public support for housing development money. You're a pro-build speaker. Do you support the mayor on this one?
I need to see, the mayor said this as an aside to me just very recently. He's coming in to see me next week with an actual proposal in writing, and the devil's in the details. But from what he explained to me, there is zero fiscal impact, and what he's looking for, what he's asking for, would be in the future, if this building ever did get built. We've been talking about this since as long as I've been speaker.
Yeah.
And if it gets built, it would generate a certain amount of sales tax on the materials, and they would like an exemption for that. It wouldn't cost anything, because if the building doesn't get built, there's no cost to the taxpayers. I'll keep an open mind, and we'll listen to what people have to say. We'll listen to all the stakeholders.
But how about direct public assistance? The developer, he said the developer's going to ask for that.
With all due respect, you started this statement by saying that I'm talking about the sky is falling, we don't have money. Now you're asking me, if they want to direct. We don't simply have a lot of extra money in this budget. We have a 30 million. So the chances of anybody getting an extra supplement or money is very, very slim. Now, we'll keep our options open because we wait for the May revenue numbers, but the reality is this is going to be a difficult budget.
Speaker, a minute left. Donald Trump, he tried to overturn the election. He broke every rule. He got indicted. He won more votes and is going back to the White House. You're a Democrat, but what lesson do you take away from Trump's comeback, and how's it going to affect how you do your job going forward? 45 seconds.
So what I take away from this is his campaign was smart enough to focus on the bread and butter issues that mattered, and he used the divide issues to divide traditional people from the Democratic base, and he focused on jobs and, like I said, bread and butter issues, things that people talked about at the kitchen table: inflation, groceries, cost of living, etc. What does that mean for Rhode Island? The short term, I think a Trump presidency, I think we're going to have less federal aid than we've gotten under a Biden administration. Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, Gina Raimondo, they were there. They were very supportive of Rhode Island. I don't think we're going to have that same type of relationship with whomever the Trump cabinet ends up being.
All right, Speaker Shekarchi, Leader Blazejewski, thanks so much for joining us on the program. And if you missed any of it, it's on WPRI.com, or you can scan that code for our podcast. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.